You're listening to the Packernet Podcast Network.
US Cellular has noticed the way we use our phones has gotten ironic. We try to put our phones down for dinner, but the menu's on a QR code. That's ironic. We hit like on social posts that we don't actually like, which is ironic. Which is why US Cellular created Us Mode, to help us reconnect with each other and use our phones less ironically. A phone company wanting people to use their phones less is ironic. Let's find us again with Us Mode from US Cellular. Visit uscellular.com/built-for-us to get started.
When it comes to towing, seeing is believing. That's why Chevy Truck's advanced camera technology offers up to 8 available cameras for 14 unique views, so you can focus on the view that really matters. Chevrolet, together let's drive. Learn more about Chevy Trucks at Chevy.com. Safety or driver assistance features are no substitute for the driver's responsibility to operate the vehicle in a safe manner. Read the vehicle owner's manual for important feature limitations and information.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Packernet Podcast. I am your host and resident panelist, as always, Ryan Schlip. Check us out online, packernet.com. Find me on Twitter, pack_data. Well, today is 53 day. I'm going to go over my thought process on some of this. I was so dug into this, and I'm playing around with it, and I was like, wait, when am I going to... Oh, shoot, I got to record a podcast about it. So, oh, boy. It seems like every time you do this, I always feel like I'm trying to find an answer that doesn't exist, and I think that's exactly what we're doing here. And I am really getting tired of this thing not recording what I'm talking about. 10 minutes later, I got to go back. Anyways, just when you thought that you had it all done and everything was ready to rock and roll, the Packers throw a massive wrench in your plans. The Green Bay Packers have officially traded for Malik Willis, quarterback from the Tennessee Titans. Many people thought it was going to be a lock first-round pick, greatest quarterback in the history of the world. I wish it wasn't true, but I've done nothing but mock the guy since day one. The fact that he shouldn't be a first-round pick. He's not very good. He fell to the third. I did a victory lap about it, and then I followed his career so that I could mock him every step of the way when he ended up being terrible. Not necessarily because I'm a bad person. That's only part of the story. But largely because, again, the media fell in love with him. And then nothing was his fault. And it's the coach's fault. And they're not giving him opportunities. And then they praised him whenever he couldn't find a guy that was wide open and decided to run. They're like, see, I told you he was good. It's like, what are you talking about good, bro? That's not good. You're supposed to throw the ball. That's your job when you're a quarterback. And you took off and ran, which is a little bit weird. So it's a little bit hard for me to come back and be like, yeah, he's going to be so good. So look, haven't had a ton of time to digest this. The consensus is, well, they went and got their number 2. I mean, it's not 100%, but as much mental jiu-jitsu as you can do, it's really hard to come up with a different scenario. I don't see a need for them to carry 3. And I don't know. I mean, you're not going to put him on the practice squad. I think that's the most important thing here. You didn't... Well, I guess I shouldn't say that. That's not entirely true. There is a world where... I hate to even get the words out. Clifford or Pratt could end up being your number 2. Maybe they like Pratt enough, right? Here's a scenario for you. They like Pratt as the number 2, but they're done with Clifford. So they went out and got Malik to replace him as a developmental guy. Because that's what he is, and everybody acknowledges that. Everybody acknowledges he's a developmental guy. He has some high-end athleticism. All teams, including the Packers, are trying to find that hidden gem, the guy that is mobile, the guy that can run around, who can do all the crazy stuff, and also throws the ball really, really well. And there's literally like one guy that can do it right now, and it's Lamar Jackson, and that's it. He's the only one. Nobody else can pull it off. I mean, Jordan Love can move, but he's not like that. You know what I mean? And they're just constantly trying and constantly failing, and I don't fully understand it, but I guess, you got to try something. Like I said, if you've decided to get rid of one of your quarterbacks, and no offense to Clifford, I hope it's Clifford because I like Pratt, all right? I would be stunned if it's Pratt. That would mean that they just really, really hated him, and I would be stunned by that. You used draft capital on a guy that came in and actually played really well except for one game, and even in that game, he played really well and then just kind of had a blip toward the end. It was like one or two bad drives. I don't know what's going on. Then there's the scenario of 3 quarterbacks, which just seems really unlikely, but I don't know, man. It's all crazy. So today, I'm having a hard time finding stuff because I'm not kidding you, I must have 100 tabs. Let me pull up how many windows I have here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 windows. Each window has, like this one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28 tabs. I hate having open tabs. I can't close them. It's like, oh, I need that. I can't find anything. Anyways, we're going to work on the 53-man roster today with all the new information. There's some stuff that I want to go over that's somewhat relevant to my thought process and whatnot. I kind of started on the practice squad, but not really. It's more of a thought experiment thing than anything, but I kind of want to walk through that with you, if that would be, if you'd be so inclined. So what I did is the same thing I've done every year, and why I don't just save this somewhere, I don't know, but I had to do it all over. I'm sure it's there somewhere, I just wasn't able to find it, and so hopefully next year I can find it, and this won't be as much of a problem. But I went back to 2017 because it starts to get fuzzy when you go back even further, and it's a little bit different because you've got, like offensive line is always weird because really everything is just offensive. Most, if you go to websites, they're like 9 offensive linemen, 10 offensive linemen, whatever. And they don't really delegate tackle, guard, center because it's malleable. People move around. I tried to split it up just to get a picture of it. There's also a question of, is there going to be a difference of how many, defensive tackles compared to linebackers we have, because we don't have a base 3 down defensive tackles. We have 2 in base. I understand the whole nickel thing, but we have 2 defensive tackles in base, which we run a decent amount of time, and we're going to have more linebacker use. So I don't know if that ups things or not. I don't know. But I more or less just decided that it's going to be a similar philosophy. I don't think Brian Gutekunst is going to change all that much unless Hafley kind of emphasizes something like we're going to need more guys for this, that, or the other. I don't know, but I doubt it. I really don't think it's going to make that much of a difference, but just kind of a thought I had coming into it, and that was about that. So I guess my general thought process this time, and it's not necessarily the best strategy, because if you look at last year, they broke a lot of rules, right? So, for example, last year, if I can try to find it, they had never had more than 5 offensive tackles. Last year, they brought on 6. They had 3 offensive guards every single year from 2017 to 2022. They brought in 4. They've only ever had 9 or 10 offensive linemen. Last year, they did 11. What else? Oh, they have between their average, well, I guess I don't know because that one's mixed in, but they usually have 6 or 7 cornerbacks. 2022, they broke that and did 5. 2023, they broke it and did 4. 4 cornerbacks. And then the ultimate what the heck, just 53-man roster buster is they did not bring a long snapper on. Now, there is a difference between, we got to remember, there is an initial 53, and a lot of the initial 53 is screwing around. It's maneuvering. It's strategy. Of course we're going to have a long snapper, right? Another question is, could there be one quarterback on the 53? And of course that's a stupid question unless you assume that we're just talking the initial 53 for the sake of maneuvering, and then they're going to bring a guy on the 53, for example, for game day. They'll elevate somebody or activate somebody or whatever the case may be. So it makes it a lot more difficult. But what I decided to do is I have the highs, like the maximums. So, for example, wide receiver, the highest ever was in 2018. They had 8 wide receivers. The lowest, they had in 2020 and 2017 was 5. So I built out a roster with just the minimums, with the idea being fill these first because this has to be. So let's say like the absolute hardest. You can only have 2 quarterbacks, 5 receivers, 2 running backs, 0 fullbacks, 3 tight ends, 3 tackles, 3 guards, 1 center, although I changed that because the minimum offensive line is 9. So I started with 3-3-1 and then added a couple. Defensive tackle 5, defensive end, pass rusher 4, linebacker 3, corner 4, safety 4, kicker punter 1, long snapper technically 0, but whatever. I put it at 0. So I didn't put one on this. It's not a 53, it's a whatever it is, however many, 40 something. So it's sort of easy for some of these, in my opinion. Let's just go ahead and dive into it. So for quarterback, you have 2. What I did have was Love and Clifford, Michael Pratt to the practice squad. I know there's some concern that if we waive Pratt, he's going to get picked up. There is some chance of that. I don't know how high it would be, especially with that last performance. Another thing to keep in mind, I don't know how much it matters, but there is a rule that you can protect 4 practice squad players. Now, you still have to waive them, and I think that's when they're in danger. But once you bring them on the practice squad, nobody is allowed to sign these people off of the practice squads. So once we can slot Michael Pratt back in there, he would be probably one of those 4, and you can elect 4 every single week to be safe from getting picked up. So we just got to get him through that initial phase, and that could be a thing where they would carry 3 quarterbacks, for example. They wouldn't put Willis because the Packers gave up a 7th-round pick. Obviously, there's some demand for him. So they would have to carry 3 quarterbacks to try to get him through and then waive Pratt and bring blah, 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 right? I'm not going to do all that jockeying around. It's just something to consider. If they do it, you heard it here first, and that's why. But that's how I now have it. Love and Willis, they're going to waive both Pratt and Clifford, and fingers crossed they will bring back Pratt to be on the practice squad. But be prepared to see both quarterbacks getting cut. Don't panic. That's what happens for guys that go on the practice squad sometimes. Wide receiver, you get 5. I think that is a fairly perfect number as far as like how easy it is. Watson, Dobbs, Reed, Wicks. Hold on 1 second. I have to make an adjustment here. Oh, no, we're good. We're good. Watson, Dobbs, Reed, Wicks, and then I think the outside of the top 4, in my opinion, the obvious top guy is Heath. There was a lot of love for Melton. I think it's a little overblown. Number 1, because last year the idea that he was a great receiver is false. He played quite a bit. He had 2 good games. The rest was not great. And then he kind of imploded this offseason with, obviously 1 really good showing, which is why I think Bo Melton would be the next guy. But I think Heath is pretty well locked up the number 5 spot. So the 5 wide receivers would be Watson, Dobbs, Reed, Wicks, Heath. Then running back, it's super complicated. Pretty much everybody. And by the way, I want to give a shout out to Mr. Matt Pickett, Matt Trombone on X. Matt Trombone of Hey, We Like Your Pod. If you haven't listened to that, you should check it out. He shouted out this show many, many times. But he put together, I participated last year. I didn't get it in fast enough this year. Holy cow. I kind of feel left out now because everyone on Packers Twitter is in this. Just freaking everybody. Anyways, really, really impressive spreadsheet. I think there are 44 entrants because there are 44 yeses for Jordan Love. So unless, somebody said no, that would be how many people are in here. So really solid resource. But if you look at, it seems like a lot of people are torn between A.J. Dillon and or Marshawn Lloyd. I doubt anybody did both. Let me quick take a look here. Yep, some people did. Tommy B. Evans, Matt Evans, both put them both on IR. That looks like it. But pretty much everybody put at least one of them on IR. Now, there was a report that came out from I guess you'd say a Green Bay Packers insider saying that Marshawn Lloyd is expected to be on IR. And so I went with that. I already had him on there as my expectation. And so what I did is I put Jacobs and Dillon as my 2 running backs. I put Lloyd on IR. Now, to be clear, you can put 2 people, you can have 8 people total on IR. You can put 2 on IR, which counts against your 8 prior to the regular season. So during this cut down phase. I do have 2. We'll get to the second one in a minute. All right. Fullback, I put 0 because that is the minimum. It's 0. Tight end, the minimum was 3. This one is also tough. Musgrave and Kraft are the obvious 2. After that, I really didn't know what exactly to do. Reason being, I don't know the status of Tyler Davis. I was tempted to put him on IR, but I don't know. So I put Tyler Davis as the number 3 because I think if he's healthy enough, he will end up being that number 3. For the offensive tackles, so essentially how this works is it's 3 tackles, 3 guards, and a center, and then I had to add some. So the 3 tackles, and this is tough. I mean, the tackles might be the hardest of anything. Walker and Tom are a lock. After that, I put Dillard. I felt not super great about it, but at the same time, I mean, they took a big swing on Dillard, and I think he's done a great job. I really do. I don't think Telford, who they liked, has stepped up. Other guys have, but I think Dillard has been steady. He's a first-round pick who is more athletically gifted than probably anybody at tackle or offensive line even on this team. And he showed out. I'm not saying I think we got ourselves a stud, but I think he's done enough to potentially get that spot. So I put Dillard. The 3 guards, you got Jenkins, Morgan, and Ryan. Questions about Morgan, obviously, I decided to just roll over that. That's a pretty easy one. And then for the 1 center, I put Myers. Now, that's 7. I get to add 2 more. I decided to go back to tackle with Telford. Don't feel super good about it, but it's whatever. And then I was going to put another tackle, but I thought, you know what? No, I'm going to put Monk at center. Most years they have at least 2 centers. Only 2023 and 2018 they didn't. I think Monk has done decent enough. I'm going to put him at the center spot. So we got Walker, Tom, Dillard, Telford, Jenkins, Morgan, Ryan, Myers, Monk. That's 9 offensive linemen. Why don't we take a break? We'll come back, rip through the defense, and I guess maybe kind of take a look at practice squad, but I haven't done a ton there. We'll just see where we're at, but we'll take a quick break. We'll be right back. US Cellular has noticed the way we use our phones has gotten ironic. We try to put our phones down for dinner, but the menu's on a QR code. That's ironic. We hit like on social posts that we don't actually like, which is ironic. Which is why US Cellular created Us Mode, to help us reconnect with each other and use our phones less ironically. A phone company wanting people to use their phones less is ironic. Let's find us again with Us Mode from US Cellular. Visit uscellular.com/built-for-us to get started.
You're a podcast listener, and this is a podcast ad. Reach great listeners like yourself with podcast advertising from Libsyn Ads. Choose from hundreds of top podcasts offering host endorsements, or run a reproduced ad like this one across thousands of shows to reach your target audience with Libsyn Ads. Go to libsynads.com now. That's LIBSYN ads.com. You're a podcast listener, and this is a podcast ad. Reach great listeners like yourself with podcast advertising from Libsyn Ads. Choose from hundreds of top podcasts offering host endorsements, or run a reproduced ad like this one across thousands of shows to reach your target audience with Libsyn Ads. Go to libsynads.com now. That's LIBSYN ads.com. You're a podcast listener, and this is a podcast ad. Reach great listeners like yourself with podcast advertising from Libsyn Ads. Choose from hundreds of top podcasts offering host endorsements, or run a reproduced ad like this one across thousands of shows to reach your target audience with Libsyn Ads. Go to libsynads.com now. That's LIBSYN ads.com.
All right, so flipping over to defense, starting on the interior. Let me find again with the tabs. So what we're working with here, TJ Slayton, Kenny Clark, Devontae Wyatt, obviously locked up. Carl Brooks, Kobe Wooden, you could say, very much locked up. Jonathan Ford hasn't been. In my mind, and again, this is just my disdain, my early disdain. Remember, we picked him up in 2022 prior to Gutekunst just going on an absolute savage run of 7th-round picks. I just thought 7th-round picks were a joke. And you look at Jonathan Ford, and you go back and watch his film. It's like, okay, he's a massive guy that's hard to move, but it's hard for him to move as well. His highlight was like frog splashing a guy out of bounds, which was hilarious. So I just chuckled, and I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. Jonathan Ford, whatever, no big deal. He really showed out this year, in my opinion. I'm not talking like massively elite 90s across the board. He just showed he can play football. And the thing that I like is that he excelled in what you want him to excel in, and that's run defense. But he also showed to be capable in pass rush and everything else, but he's a big run defender. So I really like Jonathan Ford. You've also got Spencer Wagee, James Esther, and Keontae Shad. I think Keontae Shad is probably the easiest to just dismiss. He was very recently brought in. You could try to make a case for practice squad, but I don't really see the purpose of it. And the same for Esther and Wagee. It's really more of a practice squad thing. If I said special teams, I meant practice squad. I'm scattered. Jonathan Ford is the big question mark, though, and I got to the point where I said, you know what, I'm putting him on. But then I remembered he was injured because I had a list of guys that were injured, and I looked into his injury thing, and his is actually quite severe. He did walk off under his own power, but ended up being carted into the locker room, and according to JJ, was wearing a boot by his locker at one point or another. So I'm actually going to move Jonathan Ford to IR. So those are going to be my two guys. Marshawn Lloyd, who there is a report apparently that he is expected to be on IR, and then Jonathan Ford. Now, I mean, it's possible they release him with an injury settlement or something to that effect. I hope that's not the case. But that's going to be my move because I would like to see him possibly on the 53 at some point, maybe get moved to the practice squad again. I don't know, but his growth has been incredible. In fact, let me pull that up real quick because I went to look at it. I'm becoming a Ford truther. I'm becoming Jacob here with becoming a 7th-round truther. So in 2022, and he's just a preseason guy. He hasn't played in the regular season. In 2022, he did exactly what I expected a 6'5", 340-pound defensive tackle to do, and that was be terrible. He played 90 snaps. He had a 28.5 grade, 27.8 run defense, 44.5 tackling, 58.7 pass rush. He did get 2 pressures on 39 attempts, which for a nose tackle, I guess, is fine. But is bad. So he had a 28 grade. In 2023, he was not great, but not awful. It went up to a 53.8. So 28 to like 54 is a huge jump. We're talking almost 30 points. His run defense went from a 27 to a 37. Still not good, but, it's an improvement. His tackling went from a 44 to a 67. His pass rush went from a 58 to an 81. He had 4 pressures on 49 attempts, so that was like, what the heck is that? But still, whatever. Then in 2024, his overall grade goes from a 54 to a 79. Run defense goes from a 37 to an 80.2. Tackling goes from a 67 to a 72, and the 81 pass rush drops back down to a 61, which is, whatever. Certainly wasn't good enough. He had 0 pressures on 39 attempts, but the run defense is where you want it to be. And I don't know the differences with Hafley or whatever, but I do like that things seem to be more in alignment rather than Jonathan Ford being a better pass rusher than run defender. We now have our pass rushers getting constant pressure, and Jonathan Ford magically is a run defender and is good at football. So I don't know what Hafley would have to do with that, but I'm appreciative that it seems like that's the direction we're moving. But I mean, that's major progress from 20 to 50 to 80 in the preseasons. So I would like that kind of progress and development to be rewarded, but that's just me. So that's what I went with. I got 5 and 1 on IR, with Esther, Wagee, and Shad being kind of in contention. Probably Shad a little bit less, but looking at potential practice squad spots. Looking at pass rush now, the obvious guys, you got Preston, you've got Rashawn and Van Ness. And then I think most people look at it and say Kingsley and Igbare, and then we'll see. Again, I think Kingsley's probably ahead of Brenton Cox. I don't know, though, man. I don't know. I mean, if you told me there's only going to be 4, I'm stuck. I'm probably doing Kingsley because it's like, what would the Packers do? And I think they're going to have that sort of loyalist intent. But I don't know that I wouldn't put Brenton Cox ahead of him. But either way, I'm not going to battle that in my head. I'm just having all 5. I want Brenton Cox on the 53. Again, I am turning into Jacob because last year he was battling real hard for Brenton Cox, and I was like, I don't really know. I mean, it's not that I didn't like him. I just thought the hype was maybe a little too high, but I'm all the way in. Now, there's also, there's Keyshawn Banks, there's Zach Morton, there's Deslin Alexander, although I think Deslin actually graded out quite poorly, but Morton and Keyshawn Banks showed their worth, especially Morton to some degree. But I'm not interested. I don't think they did enough. I think they did enough to argue for a practice squad spot, not so much a defensive end spot on the 53-man roster. So I am going to roll with 5, and Brenton Cox is going to make it, and I'm jacked about it. Then you got linebacker, which is just a big, giant mess. I mean, you could look at it and just say, well, it's pretty straightforward. It's kind of not, though. I mean, you got Quay and McDuffie, so that's locked up. Edgerrin Cooper has been hurt the entire time. I don't know what his status is. I believe he's pretty much ready to go, but I don't know. He hasn't played, and I don't know what that means. I mean, they're not going to waive him. I mean, that's impossible. He's a second-round pick. He could get picked up in a second if he got waived. So he's going to be there. It's weird, right? And then Tyron Hopper was similar to where he's a third-round pick, but we just haven't seen. It's just kind of whatever. The saving grace, though, is I think they're going to carry a lot of linebackers. If you're looking at it of the sort of minimalist approach of just 3, which is the minimum, it becomes complicated. So again, when I did my initial 3, I had just Quay, McDuffie, and Cooper. I had to do Quay and McDuffie, but it's like, is it Cooper? I don't know. Like, I mean, seriously, if you had to just do 3, who would you? I shouldn't even ask who would you put. Who do you think the Packers would put? I don't know that it isn't Wilson, or possibly if Hopper impressed enough, if being a third-round pick, if it wouldn't be Quay, McDuffie, and Hopper. I have no idea. But again, I resolved it pretty easily by saying Cooper's going to be there, Hopper's going to be there, and I think Wilson also is going to be carried on. He's a big special teamer, and I think they like him, and I think that they're going to be able to use him. So the minimum is 3. The maximum has been 5. I think that can be expanded with the 4-3. I don't think it has to be. I think maybe, instead of the range being 3, 4, 5, maybe it's like 4, 5, 6. It doesn't have to be anything drastic, and 5 certainly would fall within that. So I'm going to roll with 5 for the linebackers. Moving over to corner, we know Jair, we know Stokes, we know Nixon. We know Valentine is going to be a dude. And then after that, it gets a little iffy. Valentine has played for the Packers. And let me give you this real quick. The minimum, maximum stuff, just so we're clear. The minimum is 4. So that would be, in my opinion, Jair, Stokes, Nixon, Valentine. That's the 4. The maximum is 7. The average is about 6. So they could honestly roll with the 4 if they really wanted to. The question is, are they going to add, and who are they going to add? My first instinct was to put King, and obviously I'm biased, and maybe that's stupid, but that was my first instinct. But when I looked into it, if we look at Valentine, he played the 14th most snaps for the Packers on defense last year, 488 snaps in 10 games. He had a 60 grade, 62 coverage grade. I mean, he was a contributor, and I think he proved to be a guy that played 10 games. He's got a ton of experience. It just makes sense that they would want to carry him as depth. So honestly, I'd probably put him ahead of King. But again, I'm not going to battle myself over that because I am going to put King on there. I can absolutely see a path where King doesn't make it this year. He was good, not great. I think they would certainly stash him on the practice squad as a developmental guy and see what happens from there. But I'm going to trust that King actually, I mean, he exhibits everything that this Hafley defense and these guys want. He was drafted for this defense. I think he's built for this defense. He's just a physical, downhill, just absolutely violent. I mean, that hit, if nothing else, I mean, obviously he popped the ball out to get a turnover, which is huge, but then that hit where he knocked that guy into last week and his own helmet comes flying off. I mean, that's just him saying, I'm built for this. So I'm all over that. I'm excited. Safety is where I'm going to get myself in trouble. If you watched Packernet Packernet Derailed, you already know how this goes. Safety, I mean, it's between 4 and 5. And again, they can break the rules, but the minimum they've ever done is 4, and they've only done that in 2019 and 2021. Every other time they bring 5. The 4 would be McKinney, Bullard, AJJ, and Williams. I don't know what the dispute could possibly be beyond that. You could say, I mean, if Anthony Johnson didn't show out the way he did recently, I would borderline say, I don't know about Anthony Johnson. It could be Oladapo. It could be Zane Anderson, possibly in there. But I think being a little bit more experienced, being that he's really embracing the role, I think as a number 4 safety, he's probably the most reliable guy that you would want on there. The question then is, what do you do? Because, and of course, you can always shift things around, but I have one spot left. And I think everybody looks at it and goes, okay, simple, that's Oladapo. Look, first of all, the Packers, I think, really, really like Zane Anderson. I think they like him significantly more than we all do, right? We spent an entire year talking about, does he even exist, making jokes about it. He just showed up on the injury report. It's like, who the heck is that? He just stayed there, and then all of a sudden there's reports about, like, he's on the field. Like, has anybody seen the guy? But I think he's a special teamer. I think the Packers, for whatever reason, they always have those guys where we as fans don't get it, but you got to just kind of pick up on that they seem to like him. And then as far as Oladapo, what has he done to prove that he belongs on the team? I mean, there might be some concern that he would get stolen. I don't see why he would. I mean, if you listen to Jake Shavinka on the show, he was talking about it. He fell really far, and a ton of guys that are built just like Oladapo, that the reason everybody that liked Oladapo and wanted him in like the 2nd or 3rd round for his versatility and everything else, all the other guys that have his traits went before him. And he was like the 5th last safety to be drafted. So everybody had a ton of opportunities to take Oladapo. I don't know that there's just a ton of desire. Among Packer fans, if any Packer fan took over a team, we wouldn't be able to cut Oladapo because he'd be gone. But as far as I know, Packer fans aren't GMs of other teams right now. And so I think we're safe. He was hurt the entire time. He didn't really get to play. We saw him for a couple snaps in a couple games, and honestly, he didn't perform all that well. I mean, he seemed fine to me, but I think at this stage, considering we have McKinney, and we have Bullard, and we have Williams, and we have Johnson, and we have Zane Anderson, what do we need Oladapo for? He's not going to get on the field. So I think, he's one of those guys you wait until late, right? There's an order that you cut guys. Typically the ones that are very obvious go first. And then, like, as it gets closer to the deadline, there's some kind of more shocking ones because you're a little nervous about letting them go early. If somebody's looking for a safety, maybe they snatch somebody else's safety that got cut or whatever. And then it's kind of a last minute, keep it hush-hush kind of a cut. But once he clears waivers, you put him on the practice squad, you let him sit, you let him develop, whatever. It's probably not going to go that way, and I don't want it to. I like Oladapo. I'm excited for him to kind of get going and show what he can do, and who knows, maybe by midseason he's something special. And again, if we need him, we can always elevate him off the practice squad. It's not the end of the world. It's just a matter of getting him there, and I think fans always worry a lot more. There's very few people that actually get stolen. It's not as big of a deal as people make it out to be. It does happen, and it's possible that it could get stolen. But everybody always assumes that anybody that we kind of like is automatically stolen, and that's just not the way that it works. So, again, it's not so much a what would I like to happen as he just fits the profile for me of a practice squad guy. He's a late round guy with tools that need to be developed. He's not needed on the regular 53-man roster. He's not ready for the 53-man roster because he hasn't played at all. He just got back from injury. In every way, in my mind, he fits the profile of a premier practice squad guy. He's probably one of the 4 that you would protect, right? Assuming Pratt is on the practice squad, you get 4 guys that you can protect. As I'm looking at it, I mean, you want Michael Pratt, you want Oladapo, I don't know, maybe Caleb Jones or something, Grant DeBose. I don't really know which ones you'd put on there after that because I haven't really filled it out. But Pratt and Oladapo are no-brainers. They immediately go to the protected class of you can't pick them up. You know, if somebody week 4 loses a safety, they're like, oh, what about that Oladapo kid? Nope. No. Can't do it. So essentially, once he clears waivers, he's fine because you can elevate him and then put him back and whatever, and he's good to go. And then Carlson, Daniel Whelan, and then again, on the minimum, which is 0, there would be nobody, which is certainly a possibility. But on the 53, I did add Orzic. So I had to take a big break in between to do Packernet Derailed. So I'm a little fuzzy on exactly the structure of what we did earlier, but let's just recap real quick so we're clear. There's, first of all, 53 total, 26 offense, 24 defense. Usually it is pretty even, so I was glad that's how it came out. But quarterback, I have Love and Willis with Pratt on the practice squad. And again, this is initial. I do worry about Pratt getting stolen. I don't think he performed all that well, so that is a concern, and so I could absolutely see them carrying 3 quarterbacks. I think that's very possible. In my mind, though, this is sort of the temporary move with the potential of Pratt being elevated at some point or another. I don't know. Wide receiver, Watson, Dobbs, Reed, Wicks, and then I have Heath and Melton making it. Grant DeBose does not. And honestly, I tell you what, let's take a break and then we'll continue the recap. That'll be part 3. All right, continuing with wide receiver. So the top 6 are good. Grant DeBose, I think, is a practice squad guy. Beyond that, I don't know. I think the next automatic thing that everyone thinks is Samori Toure. I'm wondering if the Packers are at the point of saying we've gotten all we can get out of them. It may be time to move on because we do have new guys. We have Jalen Wayne, Julian Hicks, and Dimitri Stanley. And I think Dimitri Stanley might be the most intriguing for the Packers to be a second wide receiver practice squad guy. I don't know, how many wide receivers you want. You can have 16 guys and then the one IPP player. You want to have a good mix of every single position. So you wouldn't want to have Hicks and Stanley and DeBose and Toure. You're taking up too many spots for wide receiver. But I do think DeBose makes a lot of sense. I think he showed some growth, but he's not quite there yet. Samori Toure, I think, is just done. Dimitri Stanley is the most intriguing. I don't think he necessarily did a good job, but it seemed like the Packers really liked him. They gave him a ton of opportunities. They kept putting him out there in kick return and punt return to see what he could do. So that would be somewhat intriguing to me to see if he ends up being practice squad. Then coming over to running back was Jacobs, Dillon, and Wilson with Lloyd going to IR. It's unbelievably intriguing here because Dillon could end up being on IR. I did have a question about could Dillon possibly go on PUP, but I don't think so because I think if you practice at all or play, then you can't go on PUP, and I think he did practice a little bit. I don't remember. That would be one loophole if possible to put Dillon on PUP, in which case you would have Jacobs and then Wilson and then probably Merriweather, which is crazy that we went out and got Lloyd and Jacobs, and we're going to end up with Jacobs and Wilson. But I'm going to leave it as is, in which case I think Merriweather would be a pretty much a lock for practice squad. I think McCrary probably just gets let go again, which is unfortunate. I like McCrary, but I think he was just kind of a fill-in guy for now because of all the injuries and whatnot, and just kind of bring him back. But we'll see. I think the other thing to consider is it possible Dillon just gets straight up cut? We talked about that before as being a possibility. Not a super likely one, but if Dillon really does have a serious injury, and it's a neck injury, and it's a recurring neck injury, the Packers are already relatively low on Dillon. You can see that by the contract that they gave him, a 1-year low-money deal. And Marshawn Lloyd is probably coming back relatively soon. I mean, they'll put him on IR, but he'll be back by week 4. Josh Jacobs can carry a heavy load. We'll have, maybe they bring Pearson in. Kind of mentioned that as a joke, but it's a possibility to have a fullback. So I don't know if you'd have Jacobs and Wilson and Pearson, or Jacobs, Wilson, Merriweather, Pearson to round out that whole group to get a little bit extra help. I don't know, but it's going to be interesting. The injuries are going to be massive in this in terms of what decisions they make. Because there's a lot of guys that, some of them you think are close, Jordan Morgan and some other guys, but I don't know. I don't know where exactly they're at and how they're going to use this to maneuver things. But the Dillon and Marshawn Lloyd thing are very, very big. Generally, I think Henry Pearson's probably just going to get cut again. He was just, he was cut, then brought back. And I think, again, we needed a spot filled. He's good at filling a spot for us. Tight end, I had Musgrave, Kraft, Davis, and Sims. Musgrave and Kraft are locks. Beyond that, it's a question mark, to be honest. Ben Sims is probably the most obvious. He did play for the Packers last year. It wasn't a ton, but he was a big role player. Tyler Davis has just kind of been AWOL. And so my assumption is I think they're just going to put Tyler Davis on the 53, expect him back relatively soon. Maybe he misses a week, I don't know, and then we just get back in, and those are the 4 that we like. I do wonder, I assume Tyler Davis just has a get out of jail free card. Gutekunst and Matt LaFleur love the guy, and so he can do no wrong. Again, could it be a serious injury thing, and they like Ben Sims enough where they say, let's just not roll with Tyler Davis. Maybe we just move on. And then either they bring in Joel Wilson, which is iffy, or they just roll with 3. Or Henry Pearson is sort of a fullback tight end option. I don't know. But to me, the thing that made the most sense is Musgrave, Kraft, Sims, and Tyler Davis. And they, fingers crossed, Tyler Davis is back by week 1. Again, offensive line, I recapped it already, but Walker, Tom, Dillard, Telford at tackle, Jenkins, Morgan, Ryan, guard, Monk, and Myers at center. That does leave out Caleb Jones. I like Caleb Jones. If he makes the 53, I wouldn't be shocked and I wouldn't be disappointed. I'm excited about Caleb Jones. I just think it's tough because, they brought in Dillard. I think they love his upside and potential, and he kind of showed out a little bit. And so there's got to be a feeling of like, man, if this is real, this could be something awesome. Telford, again, it's just based on the fact that they seem to give him a lot of chances. I thought he was one of the guys that didn't really show anything. Nothing positive anyways, but Packers seem to like him. He's kind of been that next man up, and even if he's not the next swing tackle, he's probably at least the next behind Dillard if I had to guess. There's a question also about Travis Glover. He was a 6th-round pick. I think everybody, shouldn't say everybody, I think there is a strong desire to make sure all the draft picks make it on the 53, and I think that's a big complication, and I obviously I didn't care. Michael Pratt didn't make it. Travis Glover isn't going to make it. Marshawn Lloyd is going to IR. Pratt is going on the practice squad. Oladapo is going to the practice squad. So I just completely butchered it, and I think I'm either going to be massively wrong or there's going to be a different tempo this year, I guess we'll call it. But yeah, Travis Glover, I think it makes sense to put him on the practice squad. They drafted him for a reason. I don't think he's ready to be an offensive tackle right now. I mean, he kind of fits even more so in the Oladapo role, which, by the way, I think most people would hear me say this about Travis Glover and go, yeah, that's fine. What is the difference between Oladapo and Travis Glover other than how much we've built up Oladapo in our mind? A 5th-round pick and a 6th-round pick are basically the exact same thing, right? It's not that different. So Oladapo hasn't played, and when he did, he wasn't very good. So why would that be such a horrible shocker, but Travis Glover going to the practice squad is a shrug, right? I mean, if I told you Travis Glover wasn't even going to make the practice squad and they're just going to cut him, I think a lot of people would shrug. Just saying. Luke Tenuta is another guy. He's been kind of lingering for a while. Again, I could look at PFF grades and whatnot, but I don't feel the need, only because it seems like the Packers have designated him far enough down the line that they don't seem to see him as whatever. So I'm not gonna. I think he kind of just goes bye-bye. I could be wrong. They do have a lot of offensive linemen typically on the practice squad, and then. Lacita Smith would be... Oh, actually, there's another big one, but we'll go Lacita Smith. I don't know what to do other than to shrug. I don't think he's done enough, and I think he's far enough down the line. Practice squad, maybe. I don't know. The really biggest question is Royce. I think it falls in that category of a lot of guys, Tyler Davis, A.J. Dillon, whatever, where... Yes, the Packers seem to really like him. Packers seem to like him more than the fans did. I think they trusted him as being a reliable guy that understands the offense. Even if he's not the best in the world, I know I can trust him that when I call a play, he's going to know what his job is. But has that run its course? Have the Packers and Gutekunst and everybody else finally got to the point where they're like, enough is enough? And we feel comfortable enough with, for example, Jordan Morgan and Sean Ryan. Sean Ryan has taken enough of a step to where we think he's actually better than Royce. And so with Morgan taking the spot and Ryan being the backup, we feel semi-comfortable with that. Possibly, I don't know. Or they keep Royce, which is entirely possible. I would just have to change some stuff, probably take Kalen King off or whatever. Would not be shocked even a little bit, but I'm just going to roll with it. I'm not going to beat myself up too much. I'm just moving on from Royce, even though I could absolutely see the Packers keeping it as is. Defense was defensive line, Clark, Slayton, Brooks, Wyatt, Wooden. Again, the only real question mark for me is Jonathan Ford, and he goes to IR, so that's how I settled that. As I said, I don't see... I don't see a real legitimate shot for James Esther, Spencer Wagee, or Keontae Shedd to make the 53. If you're asking me who I think is a practice squad guy, it's probably James Esther. James Esther is an undrafted free agent, so he's new blood. Packers love new blood. The other thing is he's kind of a no-brainer just from the preseason snaps. So the defensive linemen were actually quite terrible, except for the presumed starters, Colby Wooden and Jonathan Ford. Carl Brooks also, I mean, he was at a 60, whatever, but you had, for example, Kenny Clark apparently played a snap and was 55. Whatever. Keontae Shedd was a 50.3. Spencer Wagee was a 34.4. James Esther was a 64.8, 73 run defense grade. He was the third highest graded defensive tackle, and he played more snaps than all the rest of the guys by a decent margin. He played 69 snaps. Spencer Wagee was 48. Keontae Shedd was 15. So, I think James Esther is probably the guy that they've invested the most in, they're most interested in. He played the best. I think that's your practice squad guy for the defensive line. Edge again, Gary Smith, Van Ness, Enigbare, and Cox. Once again, I struggle to give any of these guys a real legitimate shot. I know some of them really did show out in the preseason. There's no doubt about it. Aaron Mosby was actually the third highest graded player on the entire defense. But does that get you on the 53? I don't think so. Again, it really just comes down to what are we going to do with the practice squad. And I think there's a good chance that there's quite a few just because of how good they played. Again, Aaron Mosby, 85.9 PFF grade. He played 57 snaps, which is a lot. Keyshawn Banks, 71 grade, 27 snaps. Brevin Allen, 69 grade, 33 snaps. So those would be the next ones, I think, in line to consider. So again, a lot of competition there. Banks, Alexander, Brevin Allen, et cetera, et cetera. It is going to be hard to beat Aaron Mosby because he probably graded out as well as he did, mostly because of that one player. At least that weighed pretty heavily on it, where he gets to the backfield immediately, smokes the quarterback, ball goes flying, and it's a scoop and score. But why not? I mean, Mosby's a relatively young guy. I think he got picked up as an undrafted free agent in 2022. He's only ever been with Carolina. Kind of got, back and forth with Carolina, comes in here and shows out. So it would be kind of cool to have Aaron Mosby on the practice squad, in my opinion. Then we get back to the DBs. Again, I had Jair Stokes, Nixon, Valentine, and then I kept King and Ballantyne. King is a question mark. You could put him in the same category as Oladapo and whatnot, but King's been there since day one. He's been healthy. He's been getting after it. He's been playing real well. I think he embodies the defense really, really well. Let's see, where's King at? Kalen King ranks 17th out of 43 this year with a 68.4 grade, 70.6 coverage grade. That is 12th among the football players. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th among DBs. So if you don't count like Mosby as an edge rusher or whatever, I guess you could add the linebackers. Whatever. Grades out quite well. He also played, like I said, he played a ton. Kalen King played 127 snaps. He actually played more snaps than anybody else on the entire defense. Jermon Green had 108 snaps. Christian Welch, 92. So they played him a ton. I think he showed up. The tackling maybe needs to get worked on a little bit. 18.2 missed tackle rate, which is actually just 15th worst. There's several that are quite worse. Obviously, Devontae Wyatt is the worst. I mean, it's 100% because he missed his one tackle, but still, it's annoying. But anyway, no, I'm all in on it, man. I think he's going to do it. We'll see. Robert Rochelle, I don't know exactly the case for him. He did grade out pretty well as far as the preseason went. Maybe it was good enough for him to get himself a spot. He had a 77.8 grade, 76 coverage grade. He's been with LA for 3 years. He came over to Green Bay. Let's see, does he have any regular season stuff to look at? He does, and he's been not good. He actually was with Green Bay late last year. He only played one snap. Played 27 in 2022. He had a 49 grade. 2021, he had a 61 grade. I don't know, man. I mean, maybe he ends up making it. Who does he make it over? I don't think he makes it over Ballantyne. I would be a little upset if he made it over King. It's not impossible, though. It could be Rochelle makes it. Kalen King goes to the practice squad. I don't think so, man. I'm going to lean on that whole draft pick thing. There's got to be some pride in here somewhere where he's like, bro, I can't put the whole draft class on the freaking practice squad. Kalen King's that dude. I think the defensive coaches would be screaming for him. I don't care. I'm doing it. What does that mean for Rochelle? I don't know. I mean, there's a question of eligibility, although you can pretty much put anybody you want on the practice squad. There's so many exceptions. If he ends up being one of those guys that has the exception, I could look into it, but I'm not going to do that live right now. Not interesting. LJ Davis was consistently the worst player on our defense. I don't think there is a case for him. And then there's Jermon Green. Let's take a look at him real quick. Where the heck is he? I don't know. Where's Green? Can I type in Green? Am I just spelling his name wrong? Jermon Green also did pretty well. 108 snaps. He did the second most amount. I mentioned that. 73.4 overall, 71 run defense, 57 tackling, 72 coverage. So he also did well. I think Jermon Green probably makes more sense if you wanted to go as a practice squad route. I'm just looking up real quick. 6'2", 186. He's actually, he's a young guy. So he's tall, 6'2", 186, which the Packers like, out of Michigan, big school. 2023 undrafted free agent. He took a big jump from 2023. He played with the Giants in the preseason, 51 grade. This year, 73. I mean, who knows? And he also really grew over the 3 weeks. 51 grade week 1, then 70, then 81. I don't know, man. He's an interesting guy. There's some questions here. I don't think they let go of Jermon Green. Let's put it that way. I think I don't want to say practice squad lock because they could absolutely just be like, oh, whatever. We've seen enough. We don't really want him. But I think he's intriguing. I really do. I'm putting him on my practice squad, and we'll see about Rochelle. I think there's a good chance for him as well to be a practice squad guy. But I like Jermon Green. And then again, the safeties, McKinney, Bullard, AJJ, Williams, and Zane Anderson. That's probably my most controversial take. I don't need to go over the Oladapo thing again. I've already covered that. I think it's very, very possible he ends up making the 53. It's not, this is not a slam dunk in my mind. It's just kind of a feel thing. And even on a 50-50, I want to err on the side of, throwing out the hot takes. Zane Anderson, I mean, he may not make the team, especially if Oladapo's on there. They may not see a need for him, but I think they like Zane a lot. They've hung on to him for a long time for whatever reason. I think they see him as a really solid special teamer. So I think that's going to be the thing. And then the only other guy that's left to even discuss is Benny Sapp. And that would put him pretty much automatically on the practice squad. I would say, actually, no, it doesn't, because Oladapo's on the practice squad. I'm getting all twisted up. I was going to say if somebody was on the practice squad, there's a good chance he doesn't make it because Benny Sapp didn't play all that well. So with Oladapo there, I don't know. That's a question mark for me. He wasn't terrible. I think his coverage grade was actually pretty decent. The run defense tackling stuff was really, really bad. I think it balanced out, put him in like the 50s-ish. I don't know. I could look it up, but I don't really need to. Not a ton of question marks at safety, because there's not that many guys. I mean, all the guys there you're thinking could absolutely make it, including Benny. If this was a different scenario like we kind of were last year, where you're looking at a group of guys and you don't super like any of them, Benny Sapp would be in the conversation. But because you have McKinney and Bullard and Williams and Johnson, it's really just a question of, okay, is it just Zane? Is it just Oladapo? Is it both of those guys? Benny Sapp is clearly at the bottom of this pile. And then it just kind of becomes, I'm trying to find a way to put Benny Sapp as if you had one safety on the practice squad. How is he that one guy? I mean, the only way I could see it is Oladapo makes the team, Zane Anderson just gets cut, and Sapp would be, they would both get cut, and then Benny Sapp would be the guy that comes back, but I don't think that's going to happen. So it's kind of a question for Benny Sapp of, is there going to be somebody else on there, and would they carry two safeties on the practice squad? Which, with a massive practice squad now, it's certainly possible, but I don't know the answer to that question. Special teams, kicker, it could go either way. Hale is going to be put on the practice squad because they've already designated him essentially in that one spot. You're allowed 16 players. They've expanded it to 17, but the 17th guy has to be an international pathway player, which Alex Hale is, being from Australia. So that spot will be designated for him. So the only real questions, Daniel Whelan is going to be the punter. Is it going to be Anders or is it going to be Greg Joseph? That's going to be the question. Or are they going to pull a Malik Willis on us and go out and find a new kicker and get rid of both of them? I don't know. But as of right now, I'm going to go with Anders Carlson. It would be, I don't want to say shocking, but it would be kind of like, oh, wow, if they went with Greg Joseph. But again, I've already laid that out. I could see the pathway, and essentially it would just be they've tried with Anders, and they just don't think that he has it, and they don't think that there's any more that they can do with him. I don't think that's the case. In fact, and this may be complete nonsense, but somebody posted a screenshot of that missed kick from Anders Carlson, and the hold was garbage. The hold was like sideways and crooked and all messed up. Now, who knows? Maybe he corrected it before he got there. I have no idea. It's that whole taking a snapshot thing, trying to do film analysis with that. But I think there could be a very serious issue with that, and that could cause, obviously, a kick to go sailing in a different direction, which means you wouldn't be blaming him for it, which means Anders Carlson is essentially a lock. I don't know. The only other question would be Matt Orzic. Last year they went without a long snapper. so that they could add some other people on. Perhaps that would be the way that you get Oladapo on, or you get some other person that you'd really like to make sure that they're at least safe for a little while. And then later, after everybody kind of gets scraped up, you do a little switcheroo and you stash them on the practice squad. That doesn't super matter because, again, ultimately the most important thing is the final 53. Like, what is the 53 that you want? Not all the weird jockeying around, put this guy on this list, him over here, this designation. What's the 53 you're trying to get to? That's kind of most important to me. And so that's also another thing, too. When you see the initial 53, understand they're going to make changes. I remember last year, I forget exactly who it was, they did some super crazy stuff, and it's like, what is going on? And then they, like, immediately, I forgot who it was a safety. I can't remember the exact circumstances, but it's like they cut him, and it was shocking, and then they brought him back. Something like that, or they kept him, and then after the 53, they cut him right away. It's like, well, why did you do that? I don't understand. It was very, very weird, and there's going to be some changes that happen. But either way, tomorrow is going to be absolute madness. We'll see what kind of coverage we can do. I don't want to make any promises. We'll see. I'm tempted to do some kind of a live stream, but it could be tough because it's very spread out over a long time. There might be a lot of dead periods. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. Either way, it'll be interesting to cover it. But I got to get out of here. You guys have a good rest of your day. I will talk to you tomorrow, tonight, whatever it is. Have a good one. Bye-bye.